There's a possibility that you may have never seriously considered in your entire existence. A possibility that can completely change the way you understand your current life and the deep meaning of absolutely everything you're experiencing right now. What if this is your last life on Earth? What if the soul that inhabits your body has reached the end of a long cycle of earthly incarnations that has spanned millennia and is preparing to move on to dimensions of existence that completely transcend human experience as we know it? Rudolf Steiner, the great Austrian clairvoyant and philosopher who dedicated decades of his life to investigating the deepest mysteries of human existence, revealed that certain souls are in fact living their final earthly incarnations at this very moment in history. And even more surprisingly, he indicated that the month of birth may be one of the signs that point to this extraordinary and rare condition. Not because the month itself magically determines the soul's destiny in an arbitrary way, but because souls in advanced stages of evolution tend to choose certain specific temporal windows for their final incarnations, windows that correspond to particular cosmic configurations that resonate deeply with their heightened state of spiritual development. Before we explore what these months are and why they are so significant, it is absolutely essential to understand what Steiner really meant by last life on Earth. In the anthroposophical view, the human soul goes through a long cycle of incarnations on planet Earth as a fundamental part of its evolutionary development. Each life offers unique and irreplaceable opportunities for learning, for developing specific capabilities, for resolving accumulated karma, for contributing to the evolution of humanity as a whole. Most souls are still in the middle of this extended cycle, with many lifetimes to go before completing their earthly work. But some souls are genuinely reaching the end of this ancient journey. They have already learned what the earthly experience has to teach in its essence. They have already developed the capabilities that can only be developed through dense physical incarnation. They have already resolved most of their karma and have contributed significantly to the collective progress of humanity. For these special souls, the current incarnation represents a kind of cosmic graduation, a conclusion of a long course of study that has spanned countless lifetimes over millennia of existence. It is crucial to clearly understand that the last life on Earth does not in any way mean the end of existence or even the end of spiritual evolution. It simply means that the soul has completed what it needed to complete in the specific context of earthly experience and is ready to continue its journey in other dimensions, on other planes of existence that offer different types of experience and different opportunities for growth that are not available here. The cosmos is vast beyond all human comprehension, and Earth is but one school among many in the great infinite curriculum of spiritual evolution. Graduating from Earth School is an immensely significant achievement, but it is also the beginning of extraordinary new chapters, not a definitive end by any means. Steiner identified certain characteristics that tend to mark souls in their last earthly incarnations. These characteristics are not absolute or universal in all cases, but they appear frequently enough to be considered genuinely significant indicators. The first and most notable is a persistent feeling of not belonging to the earthly world that accompanies the person from a very early age. People living their last lives often report from childhood a sense that this world is not really their true home, that they are here temporarily as visitors, that there is another place where they genuinely belong and to which they will eventually return. This feeling is not necessarily accompanied by unhappiness or rejection of life in any way. It is more of a subtle quality of experience, an underlying awareness that earthly experience, however rich and valuable, is not the soul's ultimate destiny. The second striking characteristic is a wisdom that seems disproportionate to the age and experiences of this particular life. Souls in their later incarnations often demonstrate from a very early age a surprising maturity, a deep understanding of life, a capacity for broad perspective that usually only comes with many years of accumulated experience. This makes perfect sense when we understand that these souls carry with them the accumulated wisdom of countless previous lives over millennia. Although they do not have conscious access to the specific memories of these past lives, the essence of the spirit of what they learned remains with them and manifests itself as this seemingly inexplicable wisdom that surprises everyone around. The third distinguishing characteristic is a natural and spontaneous orientation towards service and contributing to the well-being of others. Souls in their later incarnations have already worked through most of their selfishness and more self-centered tendencies in previous lives. What remains is a genuine and irresistible impulse to help, to serve, to contribute to the greater good without expecting anything in return. This does not mean that these people are saints or perfect in any way. They still have their human flaws and personal struggles. But there is a fundamental orientation of your being towards selfless service that is difficult to ignore or confuse with anything else. The fourth characteristic is a different relationship with time and the urgency that permeates common existence. People living their last lives often have a patience and time perspective that others simply do not possess. They are not in a rush because, at some deep level of their being, they know that they do not have to accomplish everything in this particular life. The essence of what they needed to accomplish through many lives has already been substantially accomplished. What remains is more a matter of completing gracefully, of tying up loose ends, of making a dignified exit, than of conquering new territories or proving anything. The fifth notable characteristic is a natural capacity for synthesis and integration of apparent opposites. Souls in their later incarnations often demonstrate a rare ability to see connections between seemingly disparate and contradictory things, to integrate opposing perspectives into broader visions, to find unity where others see only fragmentation and conflict. This ability naturally results from having experienced so many different lives over the eons, so many different perspectives, so many different ways of being human, that the soul has developed a panoramic vision that completely transcends any particular or partial position. Now we come to the central question of birth months and their deep relationship with the last incarnations. Steiner taught that the moment of birth is in no way random or accidental. The soul chooses its moment of entry into the physical world based on a complex consideration of cosmic, karmic, and evolutionary factors that operate at levels far beyond ordinary understanding. The planetary configurations at the time of birth create a specific energetic environment that will resonate with the soul throughout its earthly life. And certain settings are more conducive to certain types of spiritual work than others. For souls in their later incarnations, Steiner indicated that there is a significant tendency to choose birth times that occur at certain specific periods of the year. These periods correspond to cosmic configurations that facilitate the specific type of work these souls need to do. The work of final completion, of comprehensive integration, of conscious preparation for the ultimate transition beyond the earthly experience. The months that Steiner most strongly associated with later incarnations are the months of transition between seasons, particularly the periods around the equinoxes and solstices that mark turning points in the annual cycle. The period around the spring equinox, which in the northern hemisphere roughly corresponds to the month of March, is one of these especially significant times. This is the cosmic moment when light begins to definitively overcome darkness, when the forces of renewal and resurrection are more active and powerful in the cosmos. Souls who choose to be born in this period often carry a mission related to bringing new light, new beginnings, new transformative possibilities to humanity. And for souls in their final specific incarnations, this period represents the final resurrection of awareness of the limitations of earthly existence, the definitive awakening to broader dimensions of being. The period around the summer solstice, roughly corresponding to the month of June in the northern hemisphere, is another time of great spiritual significance. This is the point of maximum light in the annual cycle, when solar forces are at their absolute peak of power. Souls who choose to be born during this period often have a radiant, luminous quality, a natural ability to enlighten and inspire others through their mere presence. For souls in their final incarnations, this period represents the glorious culmination of all the developmental work done over many lives, the time of maximum spiritual flowering before the final great transition. The period around the autumnal equinox, roughly corresponding to the month of September, carries its own unique qualities, distinctive and profound. This is the sacred time of harvest, when the fruits of all the year's labor are finally collected and stored. Souls who choose to be born during this period often have a remarkable natural capacity for synthesis, for gathering essential wisdom from experiences, for transforming raw experience into integrated and lasting understanding. For souls in their final incarnations, this period represents the great final harvest of all that has been sown and cultivated through countless lives over the eons. The period around the winter solstice, roughly corresponding to the month of December in the northern hemisphere, is perhaps the most mysterious and spiritually significant of all. This is the moment of maximum external darkness, but also the precise moment when the light begins its triumphant return. In spiritual traditions from around the world throughout history, this period is associated with the birth of the divine, the incarnation of light in the deepest darkness. Souls who choose to be born during this period often carry an especially deep connection to the mysteries of incarnation and transcendence. For souls in their final incarnations, this period represents the final and definitive passage through the darkness of matter toward the eternal light of pure spirit. But Steiner was extremely careful to repeatedly emphasize that month of birth is just one of many factors to be considered in this analysis. It is not deterministic nor absolute in any way. A person born in March is not automatically in their last incarnation, just as a person born in August is not automatically far from this possibility. The month of birth is an indicator, a valuable clue for investigation, not an irrevocable final verdict. And even for souls genuinely in their final incarnations, the experience can vary enormously depending on other factors unique to their specific individual configuration. Steiner also identified other months that, although less often directly associated with later incarnations, still carry special significance for souls in advanced stages of spiritual evolution. The month of November, for example, is traditionally associated in many cultures with contact between the worlds of the living and the dead, with the permeability of the veil between dimensions. Souls born during this period often have a natural sensitivity to the spiritual world, an innate ability to serve as a bridge between dimensions of existence. For some souls in their last incarnations, being born in November represents a conscious choice to keep this bridge open and functional, to facilitate in sacred communication between those who are still incarnated and those who have already departed beyond. The month of February, which in many ancient traditions is associated with purification and preparation for the new cycle, also appears as significant for certain souls in the final stages of earthly evolution. This is a period of deep cleaning, of definitively letting go of what no longer serves, of consciously preparing for the new that is about to emerge. Souls who choose to be born during this period often have a mission specifically related to purification, whether of themselves at deep levels or of collective structures and systems that need to be transformed for the good of humanity. The month of May carries an energy of flourishing and celebrating life in its fullness. For some souls in their final incarnations, being born in this period represents a choice to celebrate earthly life in all its beauty before departing, to experience the joy of physical existence in its fullest and most radiant expression. These souls often have a special ability to appreciate and convey genuine joy, to find beauty in even the simplest and most ordinary circumstances. The month of August, at the height of summer, brings an energy of full maturity and generous abundance. Advanced stage souls born at this time often demonstrate a natural generosity that flows effortlessly, an ability to give of themselves without feeling like they are missing out. They have understood through many lifetimes that true abundance comes from giving, not hoarding. And this understanding manifests in their natural way of being in the world. It is important to note that the correspondence between birth months and evolutionary stages of the soul is not a rigid or dogmatic doctrine within Steiner's thought, but a careful observation based on his extensive clairvoyant investigations over decades. He himself constantly emphasized the importance of not transforming these observations into fixed dogmas or classification systems that reduce the infinite complexity of the human soul to simplistic and limiting categories. Each soul is absolutely unique, each journey is completely individual, and generalizations, however useful, although they may serve as initial guidance, they never capture the full truth about any specific individual. That said, if you were born in one of the months mentioned and genuinely recognize in yourself some of the characteristics associated with recent incarnations, it may be well worth seriously considering this possibility. Not as an absolute certainty to be proclaimed, not as a special identity to be adopted to inflate the ego, but as a hypothesis to be explored with open curiosity and deep inner honesty. What would it mean to you if this really was your last life on Earth? How would this change your relationship with the experiences you are having? What additional responsibilities could this entail? What extraordinary freedoms could it offer? Steiner taught that souls in their later incarnations often face specific challenges that are different from the challenges faced by souls in earlier stages of evolution. One of these significant challenges is the risk of what we might call profound spiritual fatigue. After so many lives, so many struggles, so many cycles of birth and death through the ages, some souls reach their final incarnations carrying a deep existential tiredness. They may feel a temptation to simply give up, to go through this life on autopilot, to not fully engage with the opportunities and responsibilities it offers. But this is precisely the trap to be avoided with vigilance. The last life is not a period of passive rest or waiting for the exit. It is, in many important ways, the most significant of all, the one that will set the final tone for the long earthly journey, the one that will determine the starting conditions for the next cosmic chapter of existence. Another specific and subtle challenge is the temptation of spiritual pride. Knowing or suspecting that you are in a final incarnation can inflate the ego in subtle but genuinely dangerous ways for development. The person may begin to see themselves as superior to others, as more evolved, as having access to truths that others cannot understand. This is a serious distortion that can seriously compromise the work that the soul came to do. The true mark of a genuinely advanced soul is not pride, but deep humility. It is not separation from others, but compassionate connection with all. It is not arrogant superiority, but disinterested service. A third significant challenge is the increasing difficulty of relating to a world that can seem increasingly alien and incomprehensible. Souls in their later incarnations often experience a progressive intensification of their sense of not belonging as life progresses. The world may seem increasingly incomprehensible in its values and priorities, the concerns of most people increasingly trivial and meaningless, social structures increasingly arbitrary and disconnected from what really matters. This growing alienation, if not worked through consciously, can lead to painful isolation, deep depression, disconnection from earthly relationships and responsibilities that still need to be honored until the end. Steiner offered specific, practical guidance for souls who suspect they are in their final incarnations. The first fundamental guideline is to remain firmly rooted in earthly life even as you prepare to transcend it. This means remaining genuinely engaged with relationships, with meaningful work, with the practical demands of physical existence. The temptation to withdraw prematurely must be resisted with determination. The soul is here for a reason, and that reason needs to be honored until the last moment. The second guideline is to actively cultivate deep gratitude for the earthly experience in all its complexity. This includes gratitude not only for pleasant and easy experiences, but also for difficult and painful ones. The earth, with all its pain and apparent limitations, has offered the soul opportunities for growth that exist nowhere else in the infinite cosmos. Recognizing and honoring this extraordinary gift is an essential part of making a graceful and dignified exit. The third guideline is to devote significant energy to genuine service to others. Souls in their later incarnations have so much to offer precisely because they have accumulated so much experience and wisdom through the ages. Sharing this richness with others who are still at earlier stages of their journey is both a sacred responsibility and an extraordinary privilege. This service does not have to be grand or publicly visible in any way. It can happen in the simplest everyday interactions, in every moment of genuine presence and compassion offered to another human being. The fourth guideline is to consciously work on resolving any remaining karma. Even souls in their later incarnations may have dangling karmic threads that need to be tied up before the final departure. Relationships that need reconciliation, wounds that need healing, imbalances that need loving correction. Identifying and working on these outstanding issues is an essential part of preparing for the definitive transition. The fifth guideline is to cultivate a conscious and serene relationship with death and what comes after it. This does not mean a morbid obsession with mortality, but a deep, peaceful acceptance of the transition that will eventually come and an open curiosity about what awaits on the other side. Meditative practices that explore states of consciousness beyond the ordinary can be particularly valuable in this context, offering glimpses into the dimensions into which the soul is preparing to travel. There is an additional dimension to this teaching that deserves careful exploration: the relationship between later incarnations and the specific historical moment in which they occur. Steiner observed that it is no coincidence that a significant number of souls in their final incarnations are incarnating precisely in this specific period of human history. We are living in an absolutely crucial time of transition, a time when long latent forces are coming to the surface and demanding definitive resolution. It is a period that offers unique and unrepeatable opportunities for service and meaningful contribution, opportunities that attract advanced souls who want to use their final incarnations to make a real difference at this most critical time. This convergence of advanced souls in a specific historical period is by no means accidental. It is part of a larger plan of evolution that transcends any individual life or any particular generation. The souls who choose to incarnate at this specific moment, especially those in their last earthly lives, are responding to a profound call, a call to help humanity go through one of the most challenging and most possibility-filled periods in its entire history. The service these souls offer is not always visible or recognized externally. Many of them work in complete silence, in total anonymity, simply being who they authentically are and radiating the quality of heightened consciousness that they have developed through many lifetimes. Steiner also spoke about the specific experience of death for souls in their final incarnations. For these souls, the transition is qualitatively different from what it is for souls who will return to Earth in future incarnations. There's an absolute finality to this passage that does not exist in the previous deaths. There will be no return to the physical world as we know it. The soul is permanently leaving a mode of existence that has been its home for countless eons of experience. This can bring both profound relief and a specific form of sacred mourning for the earthly experience in its entirety, for all the beauty and pain it has offered, for all the beloved souls who will remain in the earth cycle as it moves on to other destinies. For souls in their last incarnations, the review of life that takes place after death takes on special and extraordinary dimensions. It is not just the review of a particular specific life, but in some way the complete review of the entire cycle of earthly incarnations. The soul sees not just the events of this present life, but the grand, complete arc of its journey through many lifetimes, the lessons learned in each, the contributions made, the connections formed and transformed. It is an experience of final and absolute integration, of complete understanding of the meaning and purpose of all earthly experience in its entirety. After this panoramic review, the soul in its last incarnation does not return to the normal process of preparation for a new life on earth. Instead, it proceeds into dimensions of existence that are completely beyond the scope of earthly experience as we know it. Steiner was relatively reserved about the specific details of these dimensions, honestly acknowledging that they transcend what can be adequately described in limited human language. What he was indicating is that these dimensions offer forms of experience and growth that are incomparably vaster and deeper than anything possible on the earthly plane, but which can only be genuinely accessed by souls who have fully completed their earthly work. One of the questions that naturally arises is, how can I know with absolute certainty if I am in my last incarnation? The honest answer is that absolute certainty is not possible to obtain through ordinary consciousness while incarnated. Even the signs and characteristics that Steiner described are valuable indicators, not definitive proof, and there is profound wisdom in this apparent uncertainty. If we knew with absolute certainty that this is our last life, this could distort our relationship to experience in harmful ways. We could become prematurely disengaged from life, overly focused on the end rather than the process, tempted to skip steps that have yet to be fully experienced. Uncertainty keeps us genuinely present, keeps us humble, keeps us engaged with life as it really is instead of how we wish it were. And for those who are genuinely in their final incarnations, final confirmation will come at the appropriate time, often only after death, when the soul can see with complete clarity the true nature of its journey. Until then, the wisest thing is to live as if each life matters infinitely, because each life truly matters, whether it is the first, the last, or any in between. That said, there are practices that can help develop greater clarity about the evolutionary stage of one's soul. Regular, deep meditation, especially practices that cultivate inner silence and receptivity to subtle impressions, can gradually reveal information about the nature of the soul's journey. Dreams can offer significant clues, especially dreams that appear to be set in different historical eras, or that involve encounters with beings who impart wisdom about the soul's journey. Intuitions that arise in moments of deep stillness can point to truths about one's own spiritual nature that the ordinary mind cannot directly access. Steiner also recommended the study and contemplation of spiritual teachings from different traditions as a way of awakening latent memories of the soul's journey. When we encounter spiritual truths that resonate deeply with us, that feel strangely familiar even though we have never consciously encountered them before, it may be a sign that the soul is recognizing wisdom it has already acquired in previous lives. The intensity of this resonance can be an indicator of how much spiritual work the soul has accomplished through its many incarnations. Returning to the issue of birth months, it is important to contextualize this information within a broader understanding of spiritual astrology as Steiner understood it. For him, astrology was not a system of cosmic determinism where the stars dictate our destiny in an immutable and mechanical way. It was a language of correspondences, a map of tendencies and potentialities that the soul can work with in various ways. The month of birth indicates the cosmic environment into which the soul chose to be born, the forces it chose to work with. But it does not rigidly predetermine what the soul will do with those forces. Thus, when we talk about months associated with recent incarnations, we are talking about trends, increased probabilities, not absolute certainties. A soul may choose to be born in March or September for reasons that have nothing to do with being in their last incarnation. And a soul in its last incarnation may, for reasons specific to its particular karma or mission, choose to be born in a month that is not typically associated with that evolutionary stage. The wisdom is in using this information as a tool for reflection and self-knowledge, not as a fixed label to be applied without discernment. Steiner also observed that souls in their later incarnations often have a different and deeper relationship to the notion of life purpose. For souls in earlier stages of evolution, life purpose often involves accomplishing something specific and measurable, developing certain capabilities, learning certain lessons, contributing in certain defined and recognizable ways. But for souls in their later incarnations, purpose is often more subtle, more related to a quality of being than to specific achievements. They are here not so much to do as to be, not so much to accomplish as to radiate, not so much to conquer as to gracefully complete. This does not mean that these souls do nothing or do not contribute concretely in any way. Many of them are extremely active and productive in their earthly lives, but there is a fundamentally different quality to his activity. It flows more naturally, with less forced effort, with less anxious attachment to results. They do what they do not because they need to prove something or achieve something, but because it is simply a natural expression of who they are at their core. And often, their greatest contribution is not in the specific things they accomplish, but in the quality of presence they offer to the world. and the heightened consciousness they radiate simply by existing authentically. There is also the crucial question of how souls in their last incarnations relate to other souls who still have many lives to live. Steiner emphasized the importance of not creating hierarchy, spiritual S, based on the evolutionary stage. A soul in its last incarnation is not intrinsically better or more valuable than a soul in its first incarnation. They are simply at different points in a journey they are all on. And each point on the journey has its own value, its own contributions to offer, its own lessons to teach. In fact, souls in earlier stages of evolution often have something precious to offer more advanced souls. The freshness of perspective, the intensity of experience, the vitality of engagement with life that can diminish in souls who have already gone through so many incarnations. The ideal relationship between souls at different evolutionary stages is not one of superiority and inferiority, but of complementarity and mutual enrichment. Each has something to learn from the other, something to offer the other. Steiner also spoke about the interesting phenomenon of souls in their later incarnations choosing lives that are seemingly ordinary and unmarked by notable external achievements. This may seem paradoxical at first. Shouldn't such advanced souls be doing extraordinary and visible things? But the wisdom behind this choice is profound. Sometimes the most important work an advanced soul can do is simply to live an ordinary human life with an extraordinary quality of consciousness. It is demonstrating that enlightenment does not require special circumstances, that deep peace is possible in everyday life, that loving presence can be offered in any context, no matter how simple. These souls are like seeds of consciousness planted in common soil, silently radiating their influence to everyone around them. They raise collective consciousness, not through grandiose deeds, but through countless moments of kindness, of genuine presence, of silent shared wisdom. Their impact is often invisible during their lives, but can be immense when viewed from the broader perspective of the spiritual development of humanity as a whole. One of the most striking characteristics of souls in their last incarnations is their transformed relationship with suffering. Not that they don't suffer at all, they often suffer deeply, perhaps even more deeply than souls in earlier stages, because their sensitivity is more developed and refined. But there's a fundamentally different quality to his suffering. He does not destroy them or permanently embitter them. They can suffer without losing themselves completely in suffering, feel pain without being defined by pain. There is a part of them that remains untouched even in the most difficult circumstances, a part that observes, that understands, that maintains the larger perspective, even when the immediate perspective is one of pure torment. This ability to suffer consciously without being destroyed by suffering is one of the most reliable marks of a genuinely advanced soul. It results from having gone through so much suffering in previous lives that the soul has developed a deep resilience, not in the sense of not feeling, but in the sense of not being completely dominated by what it feels. She learned that suffering passes, that it has purpose, that it can be transformed into wisdom and compassion. And this learning allows us to face present suffering with a grace that others have not yet developed. Steiner also addressed the question of what happens when a soul completes its last incarnation, but still leaves unresolved karma behind. This is relatively rare, but can happen in certain circumstances. In these cases, the soul may not return to Earth personally, but the unresolved karma may be taken up by other souls with whom it has deep connections, or it may be worked through in other ways on the spiritual planes. The cosmos has many ways to balance its books, and physical incarnation is just one of them. There is also the deeper question of relationships for souls in their later incarnations. Steiner observed that these souls often experience their relationships differently. There is a particular intensity to their connections, a quality of presence that makes each encounter genuinely meaningful. At the same time, there is also a healthy detachment, an ability to love deeply without clinging desperately. They know on some level that this is the last time they will experience human relationships as we know them, and this gives each connection a particular preciousness. For these souls, old relationships often resolve themselves in unexpected ways during their last life. People with whom there was conflict in previous lives may appear offering reconciliation. Beloved souls from other incarnations may cross your path in encounters that seem clearly predestined. There is a quality of closure happening, a tying up of loose ends that span many lifetimes. This process is not always easy or painless. Some reconciliations require difficult work. Some goodbyes are genuinely painful. But there is a deep satisfaction in feeling that cycles are coming full circle, that stories are reaching their appropriate endings. Steiner also spoke at length about the specific relationship between souls in their later incarnations and nature. Often, these souls develop a particularly deep connection with the natural world, a capacity for communion with plants, animals, and landscapes that goes beyond ordinary aesthetic appreciation. They can feel life and consciousness pulsing through all things, perceive the earth as a living being that they are about to say goodbye to. This heightened relationship with nature is both a source of great joy and a specific form of anticipatory mourning, mourning for the beauty of the earth that will no longer be experienced in the same way after the final transition. There is also the question of how souls in their later incarnations experience time differently. Time can seem simultaneously expanded and compressed, each moment containing an eternity, while years seem to pass in the blink of an eye. There's a quality of timelessness that begins to permeate the experience, as if the soul is already partially inhabiting dimensions where time as we know it does not exist in the same linear way. This change in temporal experience can be disconcerting for those who experience it. The person may feel out of sync with the rhythm of life around them, unable to care about urgencies that seem so important to others, strangely patient with processes that others find unbearably slow. This can create practical challenges in everyday life, especially in professional or social contexts that require conformity to conventional temporal rhythms. The wisdom is in finding ways to honor both the altered temporal experience and the practical demands of incarnated life. We now come to an important practical question. If someone suspects that they are in their last incarnation, how should they live differently? Steiner's answer may surprise, not necessarily in a very different way. The guidelines for a life well lived are essentially the same for souls at any evolutionary stage. Cultivate awareness, practice compassion, serve others, seek truth, continually develop. What can change is the quality or intensity with which these practices are carried out, not their fundamental nature. For souls, in their last incarnations, there's perhaps a particular urgency not to waste precious time, not in the sense of anxious haste, but in the sense of not putting off until later what can be done now. If there are reconciliations to be made, do them. If there are gratitudes to express, express them. If there is a service to offer, offer it. Not because time is running out in a dramatic sense, but because every moment is precious and life, be it the first or the last, is too short to be wasted on trivialities and unnecessary postponements. There is also, for these souls, a particular importance in making complete peace with the earthly experience as a whole. This means genuinely accepting both the beauties and pains of human existence, both the successes and failures of many lives, both the connections that endure and those that have been lost. This acceptance is not passive resignation, but active embrace of all that the earthly journey has meant. It's a way of saying thank you to Earth for the school it was, for the lessons it offered, for the growth opportunities it provided. And so we come to the end of this reflection on the last lives on Earth and the birth months that may indicate them. If something in these words resonated deeply with you, if you recognized fragments of your own experience in the descriptions offered, allow yourself to sit with it in silent contemplation. There is no rush to reach definitive conclusions. The truth about the nature of your journey will reveal itself at the right time in the right way. What matters is not knowing for sure whether this is your first or your last life. What matters is living this life, whatever its number, with fullness, with awareness, with love. If you do this, you will be honoring your soul and contributing to the good of the whole, regardless of where you are in your evolutionary journey. And when the time for transition comes, be it to another earthly life or to dimensions beyond this one, you will be able to leave with the peace of someone who lived well, someone who loved deeply, someone who left the world a little better than they found it. May this understanding bring peace to your journey, clarity to your choices, and courage to live your unique truth, whether this is your last life on Earth or just another step on a long journey yet to be completed. The soul knows what it is doing. Trust this wisdom. She is guiding you through a process that is as old as existence itself, and that leads, through all its twists and turns, to a destiny of light and love that we cannot yet fully imagine. Steiner left us with a vision of human evolution that is simultaneously vast and intimate. Vast because it extends across countless lives and cosmic eras that transcend our ordinary understanding. Intimate because it manifests itself in each present moment, in each choice we make, in each quality of consciousness we cultivate. Wherever you are on your evolutionary journey, whether this is your first life or your last, the invitation is the same: to awaken to who you truly are in essence, to live authentically and compassionately, to contribute to the good of the whole, and to trust the mysterious process that is taking you, along with all of humanity, toward destinies of light that we cannot yet fully glimpse. If this is your last life on Earth, live it with gratitude for the path traveled and with openness to what is yet to come. And if there are still many lives ahead, live this one with the awareness that each one matters infinitely, that each one contributes, that each one is an essential part of the great journey that your soul is making through time and space towards a completeness that will one day be gloriously achieved. Birth months are signs, not sentences. They are invitations to reflection, not definitive labels. What truly defines your journey is not when you were born, but how you live. Use this knowledge with wisdom, humility, and love, and always remember, The soul that inhabits you knows exactly what it is doing, even when your conscious mind doesn't understand. Trust her. She's guiding you home.